Hello. There is a concept in tabletop role-playing games called meta-knowledge, which I think is a valuable thing that we should be bringing over into conversations about books and possibly wider media conversations. So when it comes to meta-knowledge, the concept is basically knowledge that you have as the player that your character couldn't possibly have, or couldn't reasonably have. Not couldn't possibly, couldn't reasonably have. You would have to come up with a reason that the character has that knowledge, and if you can't come up with a reason that the character has that knowledge, then that character can't have that knowledge and you can't use it. Now, not being able to use a piece of knowledge is quite difficult because, for example, if you're facing down like a fire enemy and you know that the best way to kill them is frost because you've played a lot of games before, and that's generally how that works, it's very difficult not to immediately reach for a frost spell or a frost attack, right? Like, that's completely fair. And there is definitely like a very wobbly line that you have to find for yourself and for your table at large of how much of that counts as like meta knowledge proper that you're not allowed to use, and how much of it is like, I mean, anyone with any reasonable sense could look at the fire thing and go, do you know what puts out fire? Right? Like, those are things that you have to figure out for yourself. And I do think that that's kind of reasonable as far as meta knowledge goes. Like, and then there's also this other concept that I don't think has an official term, but I call it table knowledge, which is, for example, somebody else at your table, one of the other players at the table, has found something out, but your character wasn't in the scene when that was found out. So, for example, I'm going to use my character, High Half Orc Bard, who is one of my most favorite characters I've ever played. And I'm going to use some of my friends' character names as well. So, say for example, High as a half orc bard, has walked into the village, the whole group of them, and High has immediately been taken down by the guardsmen and put in a cell, right? And Sandor, for example, is talking to the guardsmen about like, what happened? Did High do something wrong? How do we get them out? And the guardsman says to Sandor specifically that there is a band of orc mercenaries roving the hills. They killed the alderman's child, and now anyone who looks like they may be part of that company, so any half orc or orc who is carrying weapons, is immediately branded as like suspicious until proven otherwise. And Sandor's like, I don't think that's particularly reasonable. But then, say you go out to the hills and you're trying to find these bandits. Like, you get High out of the cell, we go out to the hills. It's been 2 weeks or whatever. We'll go out to the hills, there's this band of orcs. High meets them. High's like, hello, how are you? What's going on? You guys are orcs, I get that. I am like you. And Chili, could you not do that, please? He's climbing the walls. And so their High is... Nope. So their High is having climbed the walls. No, that's Chili. I've tried to film this so many times and he keeps doing things that are naughty. And I have to stop and stop him. It's such a nightmare. I'm so sorry. You're going to have to come with me on this journey. We go up to the hills. High is talking to the bandits. High stumbles across a human in the bandit camp who seems to be having a great time. I, player Will, am thinking, is this the alderman's child? Did they definitely kill the alderman's child? Or is this the alderman's child? And by the way, they're an adult. But High has no frame of reference for that. So what do? And I feel like that's very table by table. And like, when you translate that table knowledge to a book, it's, for example, if you're reading a book and you're like, I don't understand how High knows that that's the alderman's child. You just assume that that conversation's happened somewhere off the page in a book. But when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, it can be more difficult because if it doesn't happen in the session, a lot of the time it doesn't happen, right? So you end up having the conversation at the table of like, oh, hey, hold on a sec. Will, wants to ask, does High know that this band of roving orc mercenaries has taken or killed this alderman's child? Has Sandor told the rest of the group? Or has Sandor just thought, well, that's wild anyway, and not bothered to mention it? And then we get to make the decision as a table. Or in other tables I've been at, it's very much the thing of like, once one character knows it, the assumption is, doesn't matter how like reasonable, the assumption is that everybody in the group knows the thing, right? I found a riddle on a wall. Now everybody knows about the riddle on the wall. I found a note from a guardsman that's got the answer to the riddle from the wall. Oh, great. I'm at a door that says answer the riddle. Okay, now we all have this piece of information. Let's all gather at the door, even though the characters didn't all go to each of the places and get each of the pieces of information. So that's table knowledge. Meta knowledge is like, that can be meta knowledge. It depends table to table, but I specifically am not really referencing that, where a conversation between characters could theoretically have happened within some form of reason. And it's the thing of when you're all gathering together at the door again, that's when you can have that conversation, right? You don't have to actively have it, but you can like say, right, this is where I share the information that I found out. But when it comes to meta knowledge, it's something that your character couldn't reasonably know. That's why I like the term reasonably in this whole conversation, because you could reasonably find out what other characters in your party have found out, but could you reasonably know that a fire enemy is weak to frost, or that this particular fire enemy is full to the brim with like fire fuel that you can alight if you attack it with fire energy, right? Like, could you reasonably know that as a character, even if you actually know that as a person? I hope that makes sense, because we're moving on to the next portion of this, which is how this translates into books. And I'm going to use a really specific example, and it is in the cultural zeitgeist. So once again, I am making a culturally timed video. Who am I? This never happens. I've done this twice in 6 months. But when it comes to something like a Cinderella style story, I'm sure we all know what I'm referencing, but it doesn't actually matter if you know what I'm referencing, because the point is that almost all Cinderella style stories, most Cinderella style stories, you are spending your time, a decent amount of your time, with the Cinderella character, right? Regardless of who it is, you're with the Cinderella character as they prepare for the ball, as they go to the ball, and as they run away from the ball. You know, as the reader, who the Cinderella style character is. This works for almost any other disguise also. Most of the time you know who the disguise character is, and most of the time in books, if you're meant to know who the disguise character is because it builds you a connection with that character, or it does something specific for you as a reader, they make, like, the author or the creator will try and make that particularly clear, right? So like, it's also been a thing where, you know, when you think the mentor character's dead and then someone in a big hood comes in and starts acting like a mentor, and you're sort of there like, as a reader, I think that's the mentor, but the main character doesn't get it. That's because the seeds have been sown specifically for you, the reader, but not so much for the character. So when it comes to the Cinderella story, you have followed this character, in especially even more so if it's like a visual piece of media, like a TV show or a movie. You're with, like, they make it visibly clear who the character is compared to who the Cinderella figure is. So like, who the actuality of the character is versus the person from the ball, right? And it's not always that easy to recognize a person. Like, for example, I'm going to give you some anecdotes now. For example, when I was 18 years old, I got glasses for the first time. So I'd never worn glasses before that point. I got glasses for the first time when I was 18. My dad gave this to me. I blame him entirely for it. He also wears glasses. And that's not the point. The point is that I got glasses for the first time at 18. I was at sixth form college, which, if you're American, just imagine high school. But in the UK, it's a whole system. It's not important. I was at sixth form college. And I had seen my mum that morning when she dropped me off for college, which wasn't always a guarantee. Sometimes I had to, like, I made my way there by myself. Sometimes she dropped me off. It was like whatever our schedules aligned for. I mean, I'm 18 at this point. I can do what I want. So she dropped me off that morning. This is important because it means that she had seen me that morning. That's relevant. She was also there with me when I got picked out the glasses that I wanted and when I went to pick up the glasses that I had ordered, right? She's seen me in them enough times by this point. This is within the first 2 weeks, so it's not completely, she's not completely never seen me in glasses, but she's also used to 18 years of me without glasses. It's the end of the day. I leave via the front door. I see my mum's car. It's stopped, whatever, facing the front door in the little car park. I walk towards it. I see my mum's face. I wave at her. She waves back. No, does she wave back? I can't remember actually. I wave at her. I get in the car and she goes, "Ah!" because, and I quote, "I did not recognize you." Child of 18 years rendered unrecognizable because I was wearing glasses. And you're telling me that you think 2 hours at a ball is enough time to be able to recognize someone in a completely divorced context? No, it's not. It's not enough time. My second anecdote, and don't just start saying that my entire family is faceplant, because that might be true, but this is still relevant. The second anecdote I have for you is I'd met this guy for some work stuff a couple of times in my local town. I'd met him for work stuff a couple of times in my local town. But it had been a year maybe since I'd seen him, because the thing that we were theoretically going to work on together, it didn't work out for a variety of reasons, including transphobia. Not on his part necessarily, but in the surround, it wasn't great for me. And the way, when I raised it with him, he didn't do a great job of being receptive to the concept of it. So that was kind of sucky. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that we ran into one of my wife's colleagues out and about. And she stopped to chat with the colleague because that's what you do. And there was this guy with him. And he starts talking to me like I should know who he is. Like he has knowledge about me. And I'm like, I didn't say that. I have said that before. I'll go on to my third anecdote in a minute. I have said that to people before because I have no shame. But I didn't say that. I was just yeah, no. And I was trying to figure it out and putting the pieces together. And then they asked me something that was directly relevant to the thing that we'd done the year before. And I was like, oh, it's you, that guy. I didn't say any of that. And I think I schooled my face relatively well. I'm not actually sure. I never know what my face is doing. And then I'd seen this guy multiple times. We'd met several times over. We'd talked face to face repeatedly. He clearly recognized me. I didn't recognize him because I didn't have the context clues to fill me in. He was not in any of the places that I conceptually had imagined him in. So when I ran across him again, it was like a whole new person, except he knew me and I didn't know him. This also happened to me, not a colleague thing. This also happened to me at one of my stepsister's weddings, and I feel really bad about this one. So, context. I used to go up, my parents are divorced. And I used to go up and see my dad. He lives in Scotland. I used to go up and see him on the regular when I was in school. Every school holiday, I'd go and see my dad, right? Because, and for one of those, he was running a thing. I don't want to be too specific. He was running a thing with kids in the local area. He ran a club for kids in the area, and I participated in that club for kids in the local area when I was there, right? Because it was my dad that was running it, so I was allowed. And that's relevant because one of the people from that was at one of my stepsisters' weddings, right? Because they're friends. Because my stepsisters live with my dad all of the time. So they were actually a part of this club all of the time. So these two people were very, very good friends, and he was invited to her wedding. And he was kind of part of the group that was me and my family because he knew them, us. And I'm there I have no memory of you. And I fully said that to his face. I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know who you are. And he was like, oh, and I was like, no, I know I've hurt your feelings, Dad, because it's really upsetting when somebody doesn't remember you, and I'm really sorry about it, but I'm just gonna need more context. Like, you're in a brand new scenario. It's been like 10 years, and I don't have a clue. I'm not sure who you are, and I'm like trying to introduce you to my wife, and I don't know who you are. And like the thing is as well, as being a non-binary person, being a trans person, I came out as one does, and I changed my name. My name is Will. That's why I keep saying it. And it wasn't when I was part of this group, and I wasn't out then. I didn't know then. I knew something was off, but I didn't know what it was. And he's been calling me by my current name. He's been calling me by my current name. He's been using appropriate pronouns, like, no problem. And I'm like, someone's obviously given him the lowdown about this, and I have no idea who he is. And I did. I just said it to him, like, fully to his face. I don't know who you are. And he was like, from this thing. And I was like, yeah. I mean, there were a lot of people, and I only saw you for like 1 week a year. He was like, yeah, that's fair. And then, like, as we progressed through the night, he did something. There was something in his mannerism, and I went, oh my gosh, I remember now. And I had that big, this is not the first time that's happened to me. That also happened to me in childhood. I went to a drama group in childhood, and I met someone who was part of a different group that I'd been a part of. Like, another one of those kids' activity things. But it had been a while. We were children, and then we were teenagers, and she was like, I remember you from this. And I was like, I don't remember that. I remember that. I don't remember the you part. And she was like, yeah, you were in charge of our little group. And I was like, I was in charge at that thing? Ever? And like, to be fair, that one definitely, I think, softened the blow, because I was like, I do not remember being in charge of anything. I don't remember any of that. And she was like, that's okay, we can be new friends. And then, like, again, something in her manner, and it was just like, it was like 6 weeks later, and something in her manner, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember you now. And she was like, okay, cool. And like, these are things that happen to me all the time. And they also happen to other people I know all the time. Like, again, I'm going to circle back to that first story because it's the most poignant one. My mum didn't recognise me because of glasses. Like, people say the Clark Kent disguise is bad. I can safely say it's not. Glasses are in fact enough. I think because they change the shape of your face a little bit. Right? Like, they change where the focal point of your face is, and they don't change the shape of your face, but they highlight different parts of it. It's like, if you've always known someone, actually this happened to my wife as well recently. A colleague of hers wears a headscarf as her job. And they were talking on like internet video work chat. And it was just the two of them, and they were both working from home. And she is looking at the colleague, because she's got all the context. She knows it's this colleague. She knows because it's this colleague's, web chat username. And she's looking, like, my wife's looking at this colleague the whole time going, something is different. But couldn't put a finger on what it was. Turns out that because it was just the two of them, the colleague was at home, the colleague's not wearing her headscarf. That's the difference. And it really throws you off when something that you've become, like, you've really closely associated with a person gets changed, right? Which is also why, if you're a public figure, there's a whole conversation about, like, not changing your hair, because if you change your hair, like, dramatically or drastically, you can look really different. And, like, I'm worried about my passport, to be honest, because my passport is like full side shave, and I do still have like side shaves. I've got them on both sides now, but I do still have side shaves. But it's like, because my hair, like, it's not as high as it used to be. Like, it used to be up to here, which is why this hair falls this way. And I'm worried that I'm gonna like show my passport to someone, and they're gonna be like, this doesn't look like you because you've got hair all the way around your head. And I'm gonna be like, yeah, it's because hair grows. But anyway, the point is, anecdotes delivered. The point is, that within the context of, for example, Cinderella stories, we, the audience, are generally supposed to know who the Cinderella figure is. But the characters within don't have a reasonable way of knowing who that character, like who the Cinderella figure is. Having a character who meets someone at a ball in fancy garments, that's a bold choice of word. In fancy garments, go for it. And potentially a mask. Like, that's not always part of the Cinderella story, but it can be. And with their hair in a specific style, and so on and so on and so forth. And then seeing them completely divorced from that context. So in a different location, in a different outfit, no mask, different hair. I just don't think it's reasonable to be there like, no, you should absolutely, like, they should have absolutely recognized that person, because there's no reason they couldn't have recognized that person. Because again, and I'm sorry to keep hounding on about this, and if you're watching this, to my mum, I'm sorry I'm dragging you. But again, glasses was enough to for my mum not to be able to recognize me. My mum, who I spent every day with, except for the few weeks that I was like, away per year. Every day, morning, afternoon, evening, not school hours, not when I was at like extracurriculars, whatever. Every day of 18 years spent with this woman, and she fully didn't recognize me because I was wearing glasses. That was the difference. Glasses. It's not just this. There are other pieces of meta knowledge that I do think they kind of get convoluted. Like, people they get caught up in, and this is not like, no shade, but people do get caught up in what they, the reader or the viewer or whatever, and they, the reader, know about something, and people can find it very difficult to wrangle what the character knows versus what the reader knows. And it's becoming more and more of a thing with the media literacy landscape that we're in right now, and with the way that all of this is happening. With the media literacy landscape that we're in right now, there is a lot of emphasis being put on a reader or viewer or whatever, but reader who's not paying complete close attention and who's not really like deeply thinking about what's going on in the narrative. Like, there's a whole piece by what's his name? Is it? Oh my gosh, I can't remember that guy. I can't remember the guy's name. The guy from Star Trek Lower Decks was talking about, like, the showrunner for it was talking about how he'd been asked, like, this is a public piece he put out about how he'd been asked to make things more, I think it was Lower Decks, to make things more obvious because, and I'm directly pulling from it now, because what if a person were to put it on and then go and make spaghetti? And he apparently responded to it with, well, then they're not watching it, so obviously they're not, like, why would, right? There's only so much hand holding you can do. That's a kind of semi-ridiculous situation to expect your average viewer to be in. Like, there is a certain amount of artistic integrity required, or like involved in creating something, and to be told basically that you have to create it for the person who is paying the least attention to it is kind of rude. Like, that part's not him, that's my extrapolation, but like, it's so true. It is quite rude to have to be demanded of to create for someone who's paying the least amount of attention. But because of the way that the media landscape works now, between that and the, like, how do I phrase this? In like this is a really neutral statement, but in the way of like the what about meism of everything at the minute. So like, when it comes to reading a book, for example, there is a lot of like, my view as the reader is the most important view. And while that is basically true, because otherwise what's the point of a book, it's also more nuanced than that, because there is definitely an element and a detail involved of like like, you, the reader, might know something that the characters don't know, like meta knowledge, right? And like, it's been put on the page for a reason. It's been given to you, the reader, but that doesn't mean it's been given to the characters. And I've been thinking about this a lot with Clara Chronicles, which is not out yet, but it's coming soon. I've been thinking about it a lot with Clara Chronicles, because with Clara Chronicles, there are these things that you, the reader, can learn that the main character, Billy, doesn't learn straight away. And there are these moments where you get to see stuff from a perspective that isn't Billy's, even though Billy's is the primary perspective. And when you're seeing these things, when you have this piece of knowledge, it would be very easy to look at Billy and go, you're really incompetent because you haven't figured this out and you have this piece of information. But then you have to remember that that piece of information so far is meta knowledge. It's not something that Billy knows yet. And there are conversations about it, and some of those conversations are far enough away from the initial giving of the information that I have intentionally put the information in again for Billy and like restructured it into a way that the character involved would tell Billy specifically this piece of information. And some of it is just a reference to it, and it's like, oh, so such and such a body told Billy such and such a thing, or about and like vague reference, because it's been close enough that if you've been paying attention, you should be able to remember what that information was, or you can just go back and find it again. And I've been thinking about that meta knowledge thing, and like, it's particularly relevant in stuff that has multiple perspectives, because you go on a journey with a character, right? And you find out that, oh, the magical tomb that we snuck into, that with Jennifer, the magical tomb we snuck into with Jennifer is empty. There's no body, there's no magic, there's not even a crypt. It's literally somebody built this building as a facade and everything else is a lie. And then you go over and you're with like Imran or something, and Imran's there like, I demand that, like, I revere the unknown tomb's magic, and talking about how important the unknown tomb is and how vital the magic is for the worldscape. And you, the reader, were just there with Jennifer thinking, this is empty, this is a lie. And Imran doesn't know that yet, right? And it's that. And the thing is if that happens like one-to-one, we've been with Jennifer, now we're with Imran, we just found out the tomb is empty, and Imran is now talking about the tomb one-to-one, it's easier as a reader, as a consumer of media, to remember that Jennifer's found out but Imran doesn't know, because the timeline is right up next to each other. And how in the world, in any of the worlds, could Imran have found out in that time frame? But if it's a couple of chapters, even if you never see Imran and Jennifer converse, you never see them meet up, they're on opposite sides of a country, and they don't have teleportation spells or like cars or whatever, they don't have like fast travel of whatever format, and they don't have like long distance communication, although that's getting rarer and rarer, but that's a separate conversation for another day. It becomes a kind of a question in the reader's mind, and some of it is that like this information gets like stored in your internal database, as it were, where you're there like, okay, well, we know that the unknown tomb's magic is a lie. And then when you see Imran talking about it, you're like, you know this is a lie, man, because I know, and how else would I have found out? And that's where I think the conversation about meta knowledge actually comes in. Thank you, Porthos. Actually comes in really handy, is that once you've added meta knowledge to your lexicon and to your concept of, thank you, Porthos, and to your concept of how knowledge about fictional situations works. I'm so sorry, he will not stop. It becomes a thing that you can kind of lean on, or a thing that you can, like, you've always kind of got it there as a filtering system. So you can be there like, Imran, you should know this. And then knowing about meta knowledge, you can be there like, actually, does Imran know this? or not? Is that my knowledge or is that Imran's knowledge? And as soon as you've got the concept and the framing and the framework of meta knowledge, it becomes much easier to have more space for a character to have and not have pieces of knowledge. I'm going to stop now because he will not stop now. So I hope this was entertaining and possibly helpful. Let me know what you think about meta knowledge in the comments, right next to the like and subscribe buttons if you feel like sticking around. And if you want to find out about my books and you haven't been here before, I am an author of sci-fi and fantasy books, and all of the information about those is in the description box below. Again, next to the like and subscribe buttons if you do feel like sticking around. Bye.